Okay, so today I'm going to go over the comprehension lesson plan that I developed for um, our informative text class. So I'm going to flip my screen here and I'll go over it quickly, and you guys can throw in the comments if you have any questions or anything comes up. So let me share my screen here. Okay, so the lesson plan I went with was a fluency-based lesson because I believe that fluency is the connection to comprehension. And I always think that fluency lessons are really interesting and they can add a lot of engagement to the classroom. So the desired result of my lesson is to increase students' fluency through the use of multiple readings and peer reviews. And by the end of it, students will be able to display their prior knowledge of fluency through group map, share knowledge of fluency with peers, identify differences between strong and weak examples of fluent reading, demonstrate knowledge of fluency through guided instruction, and apply learned skills through assessments. The criteria I have is a lot of it is informative and just kind of observed and through the peer reviews at the end of the lesson, which we'll get to. For some of the resources, I have a link here to a Go Noodle of Don't Talk Like a Robot. Once you get into this and start interacting with my lesson, you'll be able to see that video. I just wanted to add like a technology piece to it, and I know like the grade level that I'm planning to teach is a lot more mobile and a lot more kinesthetic than some of the older groups, so I wanted to add kind of a little piece in there for that group. And then I have my passage that I'm going to be reading with poor fluency and high fluency, but once again, I'll get to that in the actual lesson. I broke my lesson down into the I do, we do, you do, so we can kind of see the structure of the lesson as we go through it. So essentially what it starts off with is you would write the word fluency on the board and give all your students sticky notes, and then you're going to ask them what they think fluency means. And they're going to fill out those sticky notes. They're going to come up to the board. They're going to put those sticky notes up there on what they believe fluency is. It'll just be a little back and forth, whole group discussion about what their background knowledge on fluency is, how they think that applies to reading, and then obviously it would go into explaining to the students how reading fluency is defined by a person's ability to read text smoothly, naturally, with minimal mistakes, and using proper expression. So all those facets of fluency that we've talked about in class are kind of mentioned in here when we're talking about fluency. They're not all going to be touched on because that would be a huge lesson, and that's a lot of components to fit in. So what I did from there was I explained how words per minute is used to calculate a student's fluency. So kind of like that smooth, quick read, and how many words they get correct, and kind of that staple that we use when we're doing running records and things of that nature. And then obviously you want to tell them that comprehension and expression are equally important. And then this is where I talked about that passage up top. So I would read this passage right here with poor fluency, and then record my words per minute, and then reread the passage with improved fluency and accuracy, and then record that second one, and then summarize it in a few sentences. So I'm showing them kind of like the whole range of fluency. I'm summarizing, I'm giving them, so I'm doing the comprehension aspect too. So when I'm modeling it for them, I really want to model that entire fluency aspect. And then I would have them pair off and discuss the difference between the two readings. Once again, I want that kind of peer-to-peer engagement where the discussions really revolved around them. And then from there, I would include that piece I talked about, the don't talk like a robot. I feel like after that heavy instruction in the I do, we could break it up a little bit with the we do here. get them moving, get their brains turned back on. And then I would have them, I don't know, I'd have to re-add in passage. Passage 5 is the nonfiction text, which is what our class is based on. And then I would have them come up. I would call up a student, have them come up, and then they would read it for me, and we would record their words per minute. And then we'd have them read it a second time, and we'd record their words per minute the second time, just to see that improvement and see how a reread can improve their fluency and accuracy through that example. But that would once again be like the we do, it's guided practice. It's me and the other student in front of the class working through it together. And then after that, I would break my students up into partners. And then I have copies of passage 5, which I'll put in here before I print, that we would pass out to all the students. And then they're going to pair off and do calculations of each other's words per minute. And then I have the UDO portion. It's a paired UDO, so it's not like a true independent practice. But it is having the students grab a book that they're currently reading at their level and letting them know that they're going to test their fluency again on a chapter that they haven't read or a piece of part of the book that they still haven't got to yet. So their students are going to work with their partners to identify each other's word per minute again. They're going to be doing cold reads on books that they haven't, books or pieces of books that they haven't read yet. And then they're going to provide positive piece of feedback as well as constructive piece of feedback to your partner. And then obviously I set up some kind of framework for that, so they know what it looks like. So your reading is blank, your reading is fluid, smooth, full of expression, just those terms, that academic language that I want them to be using when they're referring to fluency. And then I have the other frame where it says one way you can improve fluency is by blank. So it's just kind of gives them the idea of this is what you did great, this is what I still think you can work on, because at this grade level they're still trying to get that constructive feedback. But I think that's really important to have throughout their education. But essentially that is the lesson, and then it covers all of my objectives. It gets them thinking about fluency, but gets them thinking about comprehension, which is the overall goal of the lesson. So all in all, I think this would be a strong way to get them thinking about fluency and then overall thinking about comprehension, obviously, which is the end goal of it all.